Hello, Miss Cook. Is it okay if I call you Miss Cook?
Yeah, I like Miss Cook.
Okay. My name is Karina Whitney. I'm a social worker here at the facility. I'll be your case manager and I'll be helping you overcome the substance abuse. Is that what you is that what you would like?
Yeah, I think I have a problem and I think it was time for me to come get help.
Okay. It's very good that you recognize that you have a problem. Before we get started today, I need to talk about a couple regulations we have here at the facility. And the main one is rules about confidentiality. And this is just basically what is said in the office stays in the office, meaning whatever you tell me, I will keep to myself. There are limitations to this, and that is if you say something about harming yourself or others, I'm required to report that to my supervisor or the police. And that's all the major regulations we have. So let's go ahead and begin. Well, it's nice to meet you. Before we begin talking about the substance abuse, um, do you mind if I ask you a couple personal questions just about you?
That's okay.
Okay. Um, how is your physical health?
I think I'm in good health. I've had a few accidents due to binge drinking, but I think I'm in pretty good health.
Okay, that's good. So no hospital visits or anything like that?
Well, I fell down a couple times and had to receive medical treatment, but it wasn't anything that lasted.
Okay, so it was something that you overcame. How about your psychological health?
Um, I say I would say I battle depression and have anxiety. Sometimes I have hallucinations. Um, I mean, that's about all I can think of.
Okay, so you're dealing with anxiety, depression, and and the substance abuse. You can consider that psychological. Um, all those things will be stuff we'll work on over the course of time. Okay, how about your judicial history? Have you ever been to court for anything?
Um, I've I've had a few incidents. I've got put in jail twice, once for 10 months and once for 10 days, and I'm facing a battery charge right now. So waiting to kind of see how that goes.
Okay, that must be very stressful dealing with all this court issues.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that has been pushing me toward seeking help.
Okay, so um, let's talk a little bit about your family. Do you have any children?
I have 4 children, but I don't have custody of them right now.
Um, who's taking care of your children?
My 2 oldest are in foster care, and my 2 youngest have health problems and some mental delays or learning delays. Um, so they're with another relative.
Okay, so you do have 4 children. Don't have custody of them, but they are in safe hands.
Hmm.
Okay. What about parents? Are you close to your parents or?
Um, I live with my grandmother. She's always been there for me, but my parents and aunts and uncles and just other relatives have always battled addictions too, so we just kind of have a conflicted relationship.
Hmm.
I'm not really around them much.
So, some other family members of yours also are dealing with addiction problems.
Yeah.
So, you could probably say you're at a predisposition with your addiction. Do you agree with that?
I guess I never really thought of it like that before, but when you point it out, it makes me see that maybe that could have led me to where I am.
Hmm. Okay, so from my understanding, you have three major problems here. The fact that you do not have custody of your children, maybe we can work on that, getting your children back. Um, the substance abuse, of course, that's a major factor that we'll be working on. And then the psychological problems, we can talk about those, deal with those over time. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's your major problems?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think substance abuse is the big one, and I just want to try to fix it.
Okay. So, you obviously know we can't deal with all the problems in one day. And just like you told me, substance abuse is your number one concern. You, that's why you came in initially. So that's what we'll begin with.
Okay.
Okay? Um, I would like to tell you that you've made a major first step towards treatment by coming into our office on your own. You were probably a little scared and anxious. Would you say that was how you felt before you came in?
I'm really nervous because I've tried this before and I've detoxed a few times and I always go back to same old habits. But
Hmm.
I'm excited to try again.
Okay. So you can see from that you've overcame the anxiety and showed strength in coming in. And showed a little determination towards overcoming the addiction. So that's a great place to start. Okay, so now we can move past your personal history and let's get into what we're here to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about your drug history. What drugs are you currently using?
I'd say my main thing is I binge drink and I drink often, but I also use marijuana. I smoke it and eat it. Um, and I use crack cocaine too.
Okay, so you're using marijuana by eating as well as smoking, binge drinking, then the crack cocaine. How often are you currently using? I know you said frequently, but can you give me, are you using daily or weekly, just in general?
I would say between like daily and weekly,
Okay,
it
so
gets out of.
sometimes you use every day and maybe sometimes you just use a couple times a week.
Yeah.
Where do you typically use? Are you using at home or out with friends?
Both. I'll sneak and do it at home. My grandmother knows I have a problem, but I try to keep it from her. And I also use like I don't really have close friends, but I'll still use outside of the home.
So you do use at home, and your grandma is aware that you're using, you feel that you still need to keep it from her, or keep it to yourself because maybe you don't want to hurt her feelings or make her feel uncomfortable. Okay, let's move past the present and a little towards the past. When did you start using?
I started drinking when I was 14, and then I think I was probably around 17 when I started to use marijuana. And then I'd say I was 22 when I started using crack cocaine.
Okay, so 14 when you started drinking, and then around 17 with the marijuana. Then a couple years later, got into the crack cocaine.
Yeah.
How long have you been using? Have you been using since you were 22 or since you were 14, just continuous?
Yeah, besides the few times I detox and come back. So it's just kind of an off and on struggle ever since then.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask, have you ever attempted to be sober? And you have 3 times. And I would like to ask, during the times that you were successful, the long periods that you did stay sober post rehab, what helped you become clean during those times, and what helped you maintain?
I would say the support of my grandmother, and just knowing that I have the kids and I would like to be sober for them.
So you would say the family is probably your biggest strength when it comes to maintaining sobriety?
Yeah.
Well, that's something we can keep in mind now whenever we're going through treatment. Keep your family in mind, and maybe there'll be a factor that will help you become clean and maintain your sobriety. And when you were unsuccessful with your treatment, what do you think was the major cause of that?
Just anytime I started battling with my depression or feelings of anxiety, I would just turn back to the drugs and the alcohol to help me get through it.
How did you feel about that whenever you relapsed? How did you feel?
I thought it would make me feel better, but it just made me feel worse.
Okay, so you would say your relapse probably relates to the psychological distress that you're dealing with. And that's something that we'll definitely move on to talk about later on in our meetings. Well, I think for today, that's all the information we need. I would like to give you a little quote, and that is, my best thinking is what got me here. And I think that really applies to you because you came in here on your own will, and you could say that was your best thinking. Okay, well, it was good to meet you.
You too.
At our next session, we'll go into a little more detail about your thoughts and feelings towards the substance abuse, and we'll also work on a plan of treatment. And we'll have that meeting in, how does a couple weeks sound? Just 2 weeks?
That sounds good.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.